Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we'll be telling you some of the darkest secrets behind the filming of hardcore porn. Now, when hardcore porn started airing, it was apparent to everyone that it was a rip-off of the Porn Stars TV show. Porn Stars was doing so well that it would be unthinkable for a different company not to try and recreate the success and revenue that the Porn Stars were bringing in. So that's exactly what truTV did. Whilst it did okay, it was never really about the porning of items. It was more about the feuds that the family got themselves and others into, and if we're being really honest with you, we only watched it to see who would get the most irate and angry. Now, the family and everyone associated with the business state that it is all completely unscripted, but no one has that many arguments and falls out over exactly the same thing every week. Also, have you ever noticed that they are forever wearing the same clothes? Well, they do that on purpose. It's for continuity issues. So if they record something over the space of a few days, it can seem like it was all done on the same day. So those who say it isn't somewhat scripted are clearly deluded on this one. Did you know that one of the customers was once killed after being on the show? We didn't either, but after reading several newspapers about the incident, it was kept on the down low quite well. The man called David, who once appeared on the show, was trying to intimidate Seth Gold and was killed by police a few years later. Although David acted like a bit of a nut on hardcore porn, his girlfriend said the whole thing was all an act, which is kind of odd, considering it's been said that the whole show isn't scripted. Either way, it was a bit of a tragedy. The police were called because of a domestic disturbance, and David refused to comply with their orders. This led to the police to taser him repeatedly, and he unfortunately passed away. Whilst this obviously has nothing really to do with the show, it does raise one question. Is the show really unscripted or not? Because this guy sure seemed crazy. Another reason to suspect that the show is scripted is that Aaron Paul wandered in off the street trying to find a particular item that they didn't happen to have or were willing to find for him. One wouldn't think that a lot of celebrities would wind up at a pawn shop in Detroit, whether it was on television or not. And you know what? If you actually think about it, then you'd be right. It pretty much never happens. Well, except for when Aaron Paul showed up, of course. The star of Breaking Bad once visited the shop looking for a gold bar with an inscription of one of his famous quotes. He didn't find it, but it's still pretty cool that Aaron Paul was there. Although at this point the show is so successful that the goals might actually be more famous than he is. Aaron Paul is the man, and is still a big star, but it's pretty cool that he showed up at a famous pawn shop in Detroit. Now, another thing that made us crazy when we watched it is that Seth actually thinks the pawn shops help society. I suppose that it makes sense that they think pawn shops are good for society since they actually own a pawn shop, but either way, it's true. Seth Gold says that pawn shops are a viable alternative to banks, and says that people still have things like birthdays and anniversaries because of pawn shops. He doesn't add the other part though, like what happens after the birthday. Sure, a guy gets to buy a nice present for his girlfriend by selling his guitar, but at the end of the day, the guy is still poor and won't have his guitar anymore either. With all that said, if you're in a business like owning a pawn shop, you probably have to engage in some pretty creative thinking not to feel bad about yourself. Another reason we're certain that this show is scripted is when you see how the family act when they aren't being filmed for the show. All the social media accounts depict them as really good friends and getting along nicely. It's just a little bit suspect. We wholeheartedly believe that this show is completely scripted from the start to the finish. Probably why it didn't last the test of time, as you honestly can't put a price on being genuine.